Hi there everyone, my name's Dave West. I hope you're all doing well. So welcome back to the ultimate video test, and this time checking out the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now, as with all ultimate video tests, I'll leave all of the main camera specifications down in the description, and I'll just run through some of the high level features throughout this video to help save you all a little bit of time. Now, we've got quite a lot to go through in this video. OnePlus have added quite a lot of features to the OnePlus 8 Pro's camera repertoire. So to help you along, I've added some timecode to the video, and you can use the bar at the bottom of the screen to skip to the relevant section which you feel is most important to you. So we're starting off with the front-facing camera, and this is perhaps the only part of the OnePlus 8 Pro which doesn't really feel like an upgrade. This is the same front-facing camera that we've seen from the OnePlus 6T, the 7 and the 7 Pro, and also the OnePlus 8. And it's a 16 megapixel fixed focus camera, and this can record video at a 1080p at 30 frames per second, but it does benefit from OnePlus's excellent image stabilisation. Now, the difference is with the OnePlus 8 Pro over the OnePlus 7 Pro is that the audio bitrate is now a lot higher, so it's gone up from around about 96 kilobytes per second to 256 kilobytes per second, and it also records now in stereo sound rather than just mono, which we had on the OnePlus 7 Pro. Now, we also get automatic noise cancellation as well, so we've got a little bit of wind deflection coming across the valley to my left and right, so hopefully to keep my voice nice and locked in the center, you should get a little bit of wind crackle across the left and right microphones. But even though it's only 1080p, one thing I have noticed with OnePlus devices is that the front-facing camera video is at least nice and sharp and well detailed, and it handles changes in exposure in bright sunlight really well. So let's just go for a quick run and show you the image stabilization in action with a bit of speed. And even though it's all a bit of a wobbly mess in the viewfinder when recording, it's all straightened out once you watch the video back in the gallery. So let's just have a quick pan round and show you how the front-facing camera handles changes in color, detail and exposure. The sun is literally, as you can see, by my head, is right behind me, and if you point the camera directly into the sun, it will compensate accordingly to allow for changes in exposure. And as you can see, it brings the exposure back to my face and exposes me evenly, which is cool. Now, what you can also do as well, which is also new with the OnePlus 8 Pro, is apply some filters to the front-facing camera when recording video. So this is vivid color mode. We've then got this vintage mode. We've then got yummy. We've also got this night option here. Now, obviously it's not night, but I would imagine that this makes some increases to exposure to help with nighttime video. And finally, we've got black and white. Quite tasteful. And just to make you aware, these filters work on both the front and the rear camera. So there is the front-facing camera then, and a quick look at stabilization, exposure, color, detail, etc. And also these newly added color filters. So I'll switch to the rear cameras now, and I'll tell you what they're all about and how they perform. Okay, so onto the rear cameras then, and this is where perhaps the biggest upgrades have been made over the OnePlus 7 Pro. So I'll just run through those very quickly. So aside from the application, which has had a subtle design overhaul, there are some things I'm not really fond of. For example, the video resolution is now buried off into a separate subsection which you have to go into the settings for, and the actual orientation of the settings doesn't actually auto-rotate with the display, which is quite annoying, but hopefully that can be rectified in a future software update. But across the board, you've got audio bitrate bump to 256 kilobytes per second. The video is recorded in 8-bit color, and it's also recorded in the correct format of Rec 709 and not Rec BT 2020, which would cause all kinds of issues with oversaturated colour. But you can also switch lenses while recording. So there's the ultra wide camera, there is the main wide lens, and then all the way up to 3x zoom with the telephoto camera. So this uses both the telephoto and the main camera to give you an effective 3x hybrid zoom. Now one of the changes with the camera application is you now get this audio zoom feature. Now this is something we've seen on the iPhone 11 series. When you go into the application, when you click on the 3x zoom, you see a little microphone symbol pop up with a volume level around the circle. And then as you zoom, the circle will fill up to show you that it's at full volume, and that basically gives you audio zoom on the subject that you're zooming in on. So we're currently at 4x zoom, and we can go all the way up to a 10x hybrid zoom. So it's 3x hybrid, and then it's a further 7x digital on top of that. So you can see the clarity does suffer at that particular point. But if we just go back to the main lens, so you get electronic image stabilization. Now the best thing is about that is electronic image stabilization is enabled across every single lens at up to 4K at 60 frames per second. So that's quite a big jump, because the OnePlus 7 Pro had electronic image stabilization at 30 frames per second, but optical stabilization at 60 frames per second, which made it feel a little bit disjointed. But with this, you now get electronic stabilization across the entire range of video resolutions, which is really good. So just showing you 1080p at 30 frames per second because this is a good compromise ratio. Helps you to save on storage, and the quality is decent enough to be used in a wide range of situations. Alright, so this is 4K at 60 frames per second then. And as I said in the 1080p section, all lenses can record video at 4K at 60 frames per second, and every lens is stabilized with electronic image stabilization. The main lens we're recording on now is a 48 megapixel autofocus camera, and this has auto HDR, and it's also optically stabilized. So when you're taking photos, it uses an optical stabilization motor to help keep things nice and steady and help with focus, and also in low light. And we've then got a further 48 megapixel camera, and this is an ultra wide angle lens, and this has a 119 degree field of view, so that's up a further 2 degrees from the 117 degrees we had on the OnePlus 7 Pro. And when you're recording in video mode, it uses ultra wide angle lens distortion correction automatically on the fly. So when you take photos, you get this like super distorted look on the edges of the photo. But with video, it actually straightens the lines for you, so you don't get wonky looking video. And then the final camera then is this 8 megapixel 3x telephoto lens. Now this uses what OnePlus calls a hybrid zoom. So it gives you really good, almost optical 3x telephoto zoom. Now it does use the main camera, as I said, so it uses a mixture of both. So in low light situations, it'll fall back to the main camera and crop, whereas in good daylight conditions like this, it will just use that sense and you get nice crispy looking visuals. Now you can go up to 8x zoom at 4K 60. This is because of the crop it uses for the electronic stabilization. But as you can see there, the image clarity does take a little bit of a hit, but you still get the cool audio zoom feature. So just go back to the ultra wide lens. Now you can move through these lenses, but it's not quite as smooth as you get on an iPhone 11 Pro, for example. There's still a little bit of a switch you can see as it goes back to the wide angle lens, but it's still pretty cool that you can do that, and you can carry on recording to your heart's content. Now at 4K at 60 frames per second, there is a recording limit of 5 minutes for video at 4K 60. But at 4K 30, it's unlimited recording, basically up to the storage limit of your handset. So while we're here then, let's check out autofocus on the rear camera. And you can see it's nice and quick. You're getting a good lock on the subject. use my hand here, you get a nice, quick, smooth transition from subject to the background, which is nice. And things like exposure are handled really well, so I just point straight to the sun. You're not going to be doing this every day, obviously. And to move this back down to ground level, you can see that the changes in colour are handled instantly and very quickly. And you get the same effect with the ultra wide angle lens. And one thing I'm quite impressed with is the colour is pretty closely matched across these lenses, which is really good, so you don't get that kind of difference as you scale through the different focal lengths. The only exception is the telephoto camera is slightly more washed out, I think, than the others, but nothing you can't fix with a little bit of editing later on. But it's great to have the stabilisation on these lenses, and you get autofocus on the telephoto lens. You can see there with my hairy hand, and you can see it's nice and quick across the board. And again, I think it's having a little bit of a hand from the main 48 megapixel camera in situations like this, but it's still great that you get that focus that's so quick between foreground and background. With the ultra wide lens, you get the similar thing as well. Now this uses a magnetic system. Now what that does is it helps you with the amazing super macro mode in photo mode, which is really impressive. It's one of the sharpest and best super macro modes I've ever seen, and that's saying quite something, because Huawei have an excellent super macro mode on their P and Mate series, and it's great to see OnePlus employing a similar system on their flagship handset. Okay, so the next mode we're going to explore is HDR mode. Now this isn't HDR video like you would get on the Samsung Galaxy S20 series or the Xperia 1, for example. I think it works very much like the HDR on the iPhone. So it's smart HDR. And I think what's happening is it's recording at 60 frames per second, but then the output is capped at 30 frames per second, and what it's doing is using every other frame to help with high dynamic range, which is really good. Now again, looking through the viewfinder, it's very difficult for me to tell, so you let me know what you think and whether you can see any difference in the video. Now we kind of look over this way where the sun is very, very strong. It's the middle of the day and obviously the sun is at its strongest right now. But you let me know what you think of the video. Now one thing I did notice is in this mode the autofocus is just a touch slower. So when I was doing some testing at home, I've noticed that the transition between foreground and background and close-up subjects is just a little bit slower. That's obviously due to the process, and you can see there's just having a little bit of trouble getting a lock on that slightly smaller plant there. And also that one there as well, you can see it eventually gets there, but it's a bit slower than when using the non-HDR mode. But the idea behind this is that you could potentially record your subject right in front of direct sunlight, and you don't lose any details in the shadows or the highlights. So that is the idea. OnePlus did show us a video demonstrating that just before the OnePlus 8 series was announced. Now in this mode you also get the excellent electronic image stabilisation, but the difference is you can only use the standard wide angle lens, not the ultra wide or telephoto lenses. You are locked at that particular lens. Now you can also use this in low light as well, but I will save that for a further test. And there's no digital zoom at all in this mode either, but the recording limit is unlimited in HDR mode, and you can use it in 1080 and also 4K resolutions. Alright, so our next mode then is super stable mode. Now this makes a return from the OnePlus 7 Pro. This was also on the OnePlus 7T as well. Now what super stable mode does is it uses the ultra wide angle camera. It then crops in quite heavily, and then that extra crop from using the ultra wide camera is then used to stabilize the image just a little bit further than the main camera lens. Now what this means is you get a much stronger stabilization effect around all axis, and you get this kind of on rails effect when using this mode. Now the chief difference with this is that you can record up to 4K resolution now at 30 frames per second. You can't record at 60 in super stable mode. But it's great that they've added that extra resolution option now, so you can get that much sharper video. And if I kind of turn sideways and walk this way, this will probably give you the best idea of how good it works, because every movement of my arm is transferred through my elbow, and that then causes kind of a judder effect on the camera. But by using it this way, I can see through the viewfinder that it's very stable and there's hardly any vertical movement whatsoever on the camera. So there's the super stable mode then. You let me know what you think. Alright, so the next mode we're checking out is the Cine video option. So this is recording in the HDR mode, just to give you an idea. So this is at 4K at 30 frames per second in the Cine mode. But what I think OnePlus have done with the Cine mode is basically, when you use the photo mode, you can choose 1:1, 4:3, or 21:9, which is the full aspect ratio of the display. Now what that means is they've actually cropped in the video to fill the frame, and it gives you a much more kind of zoomed in effect. So that tree up ahead of me here is actually a lot further away than what the viewfinder is suggesting. So obviously they've cropped in to give you this wider field of view. Now when you're recording HDR mode, that obviously means you can only record with the main lens, so it does look really cropped in this mode. But I don't think this is like a proper Cine mode in this particular field of view, because everything is very cropped in. But you let me know what you think of it, and I'll switch now to the non-HDR mode and I'll show you the difference it makes when you use the additional lens. Okay, so this is 4K 60 in Cine mode, and again you can see it's very cropped in here, and as we're recording in 4K 60 we've only got a 5-minute recording time here. But I'll show you a difference now. If I use the ultra wide lens, then we get a much broader field of view now on the lens, and that does make this Cine mode much more appealing to use, in my opinion. So you can see here we've got much more in the frame, and again we get excellent video stabilisation. But you can see here we get quite a fair bit into the frame here. And one thing I should mention as well is when you're recording video, you can actually take a snapshot as well. You can take a photo of the environment, and that saves into the camera all at the same time. Now what we can also do, we can also use the telephoto camera, but again, because of the crop, everything seems very, very close to you when it's actually, even though we're using the telephoto camera, and I know this is further away than what the camera can see, it still feels like it's very, like kind of on you, if you like. But again, I think this is a really impressive mode to use, because it gives that kind of super wide aspect, and when you're using the ultra wide camera, you do get a really nice sweeping image. If I just look around here, I think OnePlus has made huge strides in their video quality. I just used to think it was decent, if nothing else. But the video on the OnePlus 8 Pro has really surprised me. But this video is for you guys, and you let me know what you think of the video down in the comments. Alright, so that's the end of the ultimate video test then for the OnePlus 8 Pro. As you can see, OnePlus have crammed in quite a lot of options into the video application, and I think there's a mode there to suit pretty much everybody for any situation in good daylight conditions. We have to see how the phone performs in lower light conditions, so there'll be a separate test for that coming very shortly. But for now, I think the video quality is quite a good step up from the OnePlus 7 Pro, which had decent video, but it fell short of the class best in my opinion. So you let me know what you think of anything you've seen in this video. Do you think this is an improvement over previous OnePlus handsets? And do you think it's befitting of a flagship device like the OnePlus 8 Pro? Leave me a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And also, if you've got any questions about anything you've seen in the video, then please do let me know and I will respond to you as quickly as I can. And also don't forget, if you're new around here, then please do consider subscribing, so there's more videos coming like this on my channel very, very soon. But for now, this has been my ultimate video test for the OnePlus 8 Pro. My name is Dave West, and I will catch you guys later.